Hey, everybody. Adam Jackson back here for another episode of The Adam Jackson Show. For anyone just joining this program for the first time, I'm a four-time venture-backed entrepreneur. Started a crypto hedge fund called Cambrian, investor in lots of projects, SaaS, blockchain, AI, buzzwordy stuff. LP in a bunch of funds, co-founder of a labor network called Braintrust. And started doing this podcast a while ago just to share lessons learned, usually lessons learned the hard way, to other founders, investors, execs, folks who work in tech, hopefully people finding it useful. And today's episode is going to suck for me doing it because it's a shitty topic. This week, we had to do a very painful layoff. A riff, reduction in force, is the term of art. We laid off 40% of our core team. These things never get easy. You usually do them because you have to and for survival. And a lot of people kind of sweep these things under the rug and try to make them sound great. They're not. I'm going to reluctantly record this episode to tell everybody kind of how we did it, what we've learned, what I've learned from past ones, from this one, best practices, etc. Hopefully somebody else will get something out of this. So let's dive in here. But before we do that, if you like this show, share it with your friends, give us a review rating, a thumbs up, a subscribe, or whatever. Appreciate it. Okay, so some background. This isn't the first time I've had to do layoff. We've been through this before in 2008 with the great financial crisis. That was a similar situation. I was co-founder and CTO of a company that was called DriverSide. It was an online automotive marketplace, and we were operating when the government was executing its TARP plan, Toxic Asset Relief Program, I believe is what that stands for. Anyway, we were a venture-backed automotive marketplace in a time when car companies in the US were going bankrupt and venture money had dried up. We're in a very similar situation now where the venture markets are pretty cold. Braintrust is a labor marketplace where, at least 3/4 of the clients on Braintrust are on hiring freeze. So very similar situation. I'll talk through some of the signals that you have to look for, as an executive or a CEO, to know when you have to do these. So, as a CEO, it's your job to manage cash runway and ensure survival no matter what. So when demand dries up or revenue starts to dry up or get cut, is pretty much every tech company is experiencing right now, you have a few options. You can raise outside capital to extend runway. You can cut expenses to get back to break even. You can raise prices to increase revenue. You can sell the company, or if none of those work, you shut down. And so, unfortunately, I'm seeing every week portfolio companies of mine, our friends' companies are winding down. Extremely painful, just kind of a reality of this market. Our customers have a lot less demand on Braintrust than they used to. So we chose options 2 and 3, which involved a 40% riff as well as raising prices. Obviously, we're a community-run network, so changes in the business fees and that kind of thing have to be proposed to the community, voted on, passed, and implemented through smart contract, which we're about to start that process. But the idea is to raise prices significantly to increase revenue, and that clients pay that, not the talent. And so 40% represented about 30 people for us. So it was not huge, but certainly not nothing. Why 40%? That was the number that it took to get us to cash flow even or sustainable. We get this question a lot, like, how did we get here? I've always been a proponent of not overhiring, not bloating up a company. And I certainly wouldn't have called us bloated. I mean, we're a lean company, but you get there by taking bets that take quarters or years to play out. We made a big bet on building a professional network at Braintrust, which would be a huge low CAC way to grow the talent side of the marketplace, give people a reason to come to Braintrust when they weren't looking for a new job or new contract. It took us a year and a half to build that thing. It just launched last month. It's already off to the races, 10,000 or something weekly active users. It's working. We're really happy we made that bet. We made another bet that the marketplace demand would increase 2 to 3x. And then, we'd have to staff up and build up and, automate more things and just, throw people and money and software at it. And that's the bet that did not pay off. It looks like our marketplace GSV will be flat, maybe up 10%, 22 to 23 fiscal. So certainly not up 2x or 3x. So you're looking down the barrel of this gun of our expenses have risen, revenues cut in half or more from projection. What are you going to do? And so this is where we came up with a plan to execute this riff and then hopefully push through these price increases. So I'll run through kind of the steps I took. Like I try to be as tactically helpful as possible here, and I'll just tell you exactly how it went for us. I learned a lot actually from watching Brian Chesky at Airbnb do this in 2020. He had COVID basically chop his business in half or more, put in a really tough spot, much, much bigger than Braintrust, obviously. But in 2020, I think he had to lay off 2,000 people. So super painful. But one of the best things you can do here is act quickly, not draw this out. Do it once if you can. Sometimes if it's tens of thousands of people, you have to do multiple rounds like Facebook has. But when you're still small numbers here, do it once. I kind of came to this conclusion on my own. On a Monday, I sent a note. It was June 19th. I sent a note to our exec team telling them exactly what we needed to do, why, and by when. The executive team sprang into action. They came up with their own cut plans for each, whittling it down to where it needed to be from a cash flow perspective. Exactly a week later, it was done, all through one-on-one meetings. We tried to be as generous as we could on the way out. Obviously, like a small company, you're not doing massive severance packages, but we decided to pull the severance. So everybody got something regardless of tenure. Everybody kept their laptops. I'm also writing recommendation letters for anybody who wants them or needs them, doing everything I can to help folks, find a new place to work. And then how do you decide how to do this? You're really affecting people's lives here, and you have to make the best decision for the business. And so you cut the contractors first, right? Agencies, businesses that, will feel it less, that are probably big expense items that maybe you're not getting as much value to the business for. Those go first. Obviously, anyone who was kind of underperforming that, may have been managed out anyway. You want to look at them. To be clear, like the one we just did, lost a lot of good people there that, didn't deserve it. So, that shouldn't tarnish their work history. And then you got to be really concise with the comms. We announced this at an all hands with everybody present, including those being laid off. We presented the logic, how we got here, why, kind of like what I just went through. Then we quickly did one-on-ones with everybody. And then we communicated to the community and the investors and everybody, kind of one blog post, one email, one and done. Everybody knows it at the same time. And then I was asked a lot, like, how do people react to the news? Obviously very negative for if you're being laid off, right? This is a horrible life event. The existing employees felt bad, and it's a mixed bag, right? It's you feel bad to lose good people, and then you sort of, everyone gets a little more motivated and feels a little more responsibility to do more and pick up the pace and make sure we get through on the other end. And a lot of really kind of, I don't know if heartfelt is the right word, but kind responses from some of our early backers of the project that understand how hard this is and said, look, you made the right move and glad you're ensuring that we'll make it through the other side of here. And so, what are the outcomes you're looking for here? So sort of pie in the sky outcome is like, ideally we look the same from the outside, but we're just running faster internally. We obviously have to make hard choices. You have to do less. You can't just make everybody work twice as hard. It doesn't work that way. Burn people out. But you make decisions about what we're not going to do anymore. We're going to put on hold for a while. If you're running an enterprise business and you're spending on marketing, you're incinerating venture dollars, right? You're just lighting them on fire. So we stopped doing that, and unfortunately had to let some personnel go around that area, again, through no fault of their own. And so hopefully, you get lean and you weather the storm and you don't do any real damage. And then you can think about expanding again once you're out on the other side. But it also, and I've talked a lot about AI automation on this podcast, is something I'm personally obsessed with. This becomes a forcing function for people to really understand how to use AI to get their job done better. One thing I learned months ago was kind of beating the AI drum, and we were building our own internal LLMs, but we also use tools like Bard and GPT. And I was asking people to, start embracing this and learn how to do their job more efficiently with it. And we got a very tepid response. Maybe a third of the people kind of thought about it. Well, you go through a riff and now everybody's looking at it, right? So it's really a forcing function there. Unfortunately, an ugly one, but hopefully one that makes everybody more productive. I mean, I was even just ironic, like kind of coincidental timing. I was quoted in the Wall Street Journal last week in this article about AI jobs replacing tech workers. And I said in the quote, like, we're going to double or more revenue for this business without adding a single employee. And that's a very doable thing. But certainly now we've got a forcing function behind us to make it happen. So that's our story. Hopefully, if you're in a position where you're thinking about doing this, hopefully this is helpful to hear me go through it. Obviously, feel free to DM me or whatever if I can be helpful. We'll do a little Q&A here at the end. There's just a couple of things that came in kind of in the last week. If you're a company, how do you avoid doing riffs? Well, don't ever take any big bets. If you just run the thing really tight, bootstrap, grow incrementally, then you shouldn't have raised venture either, right? But where you need to do a riff is where you take a big swing and you miss, or you might miss this quarter, but like when you take the swing again next year, it'll be a hit. But you got to not swing again, in the downturn. And so you see the Titans, the big boys do this. Zuckerberg, had to take a big riff with putting his VR initiative on hold or pushing it out at least. So yeah, if you want to avoid a riff, don't take risks, but also don't overhire, right? And that's, what we talked about here a lot. Another one that I thought was interesting. Have you ever rehired someone you'd laid off or helped them find another job? So I've never rehired someone I've laid off, but I haven't laid off that many people in my life. Have I ever helped them find another job? All the time. Dozens of people for sure. If I hired you to begin with, just good chance I have a lot of respect for you. And not always, but we hire a lot of good people and not everyone who gets laid off is no good, obviously. So yes, I actually will always take time and do whatever I can to write letters, make personalized introductions, emails, phone calls, whatever I can for folks who've been laid off. So, okay. Well, look, if that was helpful to anybody, glad I took the pain to do this one. It's something I hate talking about. These are unpleasant things to go through, but it's a part of our reality right now in this kind of shitty part of the cycle here in 2023. So if this is helpful, give us a good review rating, share the episode, whatever. And we'll see you again in a week or two. Thanks.